Today on Jikoni Magic, we are making liver. It's going to be a detailed tutorial because I'm aware that not everyone who watches my videos has the opportunity to prepare their livers before cooking them. This is a piece of liver that's been bought from the butcher, not prepared at all. Now what I'm pointing at right now are blood vessels, and they include arteries, capillaries, and veins. And regardless of how long you cook your liver, these blood vessels will never soften up. They'll remain at the consistency of rubber. So it's good to get rid of them. And the second step, that is totally optional, is the removal of the thin membrane that covers the liver. It's so easy to peel off, and maybe you're wondering why I take this extra step. First of all, I always feel like whenever I leave this membrane still attached to my liver, the results are not as tender as I would like them to be. And secondly, I find that if I decide to roast my liver or grill it with the membrane still on, it loses its shape. It tends to curl up. Let me also take this opportunity to mention that I'm very aware of the fact that liver is an acquired taste for many people. And some of these people swear by the fact that soaking it in milk for about 1 to 2 hours in the refrigerator cuts down on the intensity of its flavor and helps in drawing out the blood. I have no such issues with liver, and it would be hypocritical of me to actually come out and say that this method works, because the flavor that people complain about, I don't notice it. So if this works for you, kindly comment below and tell us if it really works or not. These are the blood vessels that I was talking about. See how tough they look? Get rid of them. Like I said, no matter how long you cook them, they'll never soften. These are pieces of the thin membrane that I peeled from my liver. I fed all this to the cat. She absolutely loves them. This is my liver that I've chopped into small pieces. So what I do is I wash off all this blood, drain it, pat it dry, and move on to the next step. I start by adding freshly cracked black pepper, followed by regular all-purpose wheat flour, and salt to taste. Next, I toss the liver around until each and every piece is well coated with the flour. Now the flour is important because it helps in the thickening of the gravy later on. You'll see it in the video. And then next I started cooking. I added vegetable oil to my sufuria, swirled it around, and a bit of butter. And then I proceeded to add my pieces of liver and arrange them in one layer. Now it's very important to arrange your liver in one layer, because if you pile your liver on top of each other, you're going to create a steam effect and you won't get the browning that you're supposed to acquire at this step. So this step is basically to sear the liver and brown it. So I cooked each side of my liver for 2 minutes, meaning I cooked these pieces of liver for 4 minutes. This is not enough to ensure that the liver is cooked completely. It's just to sear it. After the 4 minutes were over, I took the pieces of liver from my sufuria, put them on a plate, and then cooked the second batch because my sufuria is not big enough to accommodate all the liver in one go. And so here is the browned liver. It's not yet cooked through, but it's good enough for the second stage. And so now let's look at the rest of the ingredients that I used. These are my tomatoes, totally optional for this recipe. Chop them into the sizes that I've shown you. I'll explain later why in the video. This is my hoho or green bell pepper, garlic, spring onions, dania or coriander, my ginger or tangawizi, and that's my red onion. And to the same sufuria, I added just a little bit of oil and butter, because remember I had seared my liver in oil and butter to begin with, and I didn't want to end up with a very oily, greasy dish. So to this I added the onions, cooked them just enough to soften them and for them to turn translucent. I did not want the onions to change color. And then I added my curry powder, which I cooked for about a minute to get rid of the raw taste and aroma. And then next I added my garlic and ginger that I had finely minced. Cooked this for about 2 minutes just to release their fragrance and aroma, followed by the liver that I had seared. And then I stirred my liver, made sure that it was well coated with a mixture of onion, garlic, ginger, and curry powder. I added a bit of Worcestershire sauce, very optional, you don't have to, but I like the flavor and aroma of it. Once I was satisfied that the liver was also covered by the Worcestershire sauce, I added just enough water to almost cover the liver, but not quite covering it, because I didn't want to have soup. I was after gravy. And before covering my liver, I added 1 full beef chili cube just to awaken all the flavors and brighten them up. You can also opt to add cayenne pepper, paprika, or just fresh chilies. The next, I covered the liver, reduced the heat to a very low simmer. I left it to simmer for 20 minutes. And so these are the results after 20 minutes. You can see how thick the gravy has become. So at this point, I added my spring onions and the dhania or coriander, mixed everything together. And then I realized that my gravy was on the very thick side. It was not gravy, it was just something else totally. And I needed to have gravy that's not too thick and not too thin. So I started adding water to thin it out, small portions at a time. Oh, and then at this point, I also remembered that I had forgotten the hoho or the green bell pepper, so that's why you're seeing me adding them here. Again, I added just a bit of water to loosen my gravy because I still felt like it was too thick, but I was careful not to thin it out too much, and I was satisfied with it. I covered my liver and just allowed it to come up to a simmer again. And it simmered for about 15 to 20 seconds before I uncovered it, and my dish was done. You can serve your liver at this point as it is. It's really flavorful, but I normally go the extra step of adding the tomatoes. Like I said, the tomatoes are totally optional. I prefer having pineapple slices, but my husband cannot stand the pineapple slices in his liver. So as a compromise, I add tomatoes, and then I turn off the heat. I don't let the tomatoes cook. I don't let them soften. I serve the dish as is. And why do I do this? Because I want to feel the tomatoes or the pineapples pop and release their juices in my mouth. So, and the next step is just to serve. I wanted you to see how the dish looked like. You can see the tomatoes are still plump. They are juicy, very succulent. I really enjoy having the tomatoes as they're looking full of the red color popping. And on this day, I served my liver with chapati and steamed cabbages. If you're interested in how I made my chapati, follow the link that I've provided somewhere on this video and you'll be sorted. So finally, for presentation purposes, I garnished my liver with some spring onions and dhania. And here is a close-up of the liver, and thank you so much for watching this video up till the end. Until next time, when you meet again for another fantastic recipe on Jikoni Magic, goodbye.